This is Autoline This Week, the show that gets you inside the global automotive industry. Underwriting for the production of Autoline This Week has been provided by RSM.
Prepare for challenges specific to your business by working with trusted advisors who help turn obstacles into opportunities. Experience the power of being understood. RSM, Audit, Tax, and Consulting for the Middle Market.
And now, here's your host, John McElroy.
I want to thank you for joining us on Autoline This Week. Today we're going to be talking about the best vehicles that were introduced for the 2020 model year. It's all part of the North American Car and Truck and Utility of the Year Awards. And we're going to be doing that because I've got three of the jurors that are with us today, including Paul Eisenstein from the Detroit Bureau, Mike Austin from Hemmings, and Drew Winter from Wards. And good to have the three of you here today.
Good to be with you.
I want to start talking about the utilities that were introduced in the 2020 model year, because there were so many all-new ones that came out. But let's really concentrate on the three finalists. We, the jury, 50 jurors who have whittled this long list down to the top three finalists, which are the Lincoln Aviator, the Hyundai Palisade, and the Kia Telluride. Paul, let's start with the Lincoln Aviator. Why did this make the finalist list, in your opinion?
I think it was a real showing by Lincoln. So we are officially not supposed to reward a brand for really making a comeback. The reality is it'll always influence you when you see a brand that really surprises you. And the fact is that Lincoln has done some really surprising things over the last year or so. This is a brand I think most of us probably would have written off, if not for dead, then just sort of figured it was in the off-ramp. And today it is showing real signs of vitality, and no vehicle, I think, has done it more effectively than the Aviator.
Okay, and we'll get into more of the details. Mike, let's get your opinion on why this made the finalist list.
You know, it's an overall execution. You know, like the Aviator actually makes me think of the Explorer, because that was one of the surprises for me that didn't make it. In my personal opinion, if something shares something with the mass market car, when you talk of the year, there's other reasons to like the Explorer, but that gets a little bit of a nudge. So that was a surprise for me. But overall, you have this great platform, this great chassis, and like Paul said, you get in it and you're like, wow, this is, they've been doing things well for a while, but this is one where, a bit like the Navigator, but I think to a greater degree, you get in it and you go, okay, this is at the top of its class. Like, as soon as you're in it and you understand. And there's a lot of fine detail about it I like too, even just the seating position and the belt line. You're sort of back to that old school pickup feel where you're on top of a car looking over the dash, as opposed to the the current thing with SUVs where you're kind of in a cage. This had that kind of feeling where you're like a little more open and airy. Just and all of those things add up. There's all these little things about that, like, it rides really soft in a good way. You're like, I'm driving an SUV. I don't need to be carving corners. I want it to lean in the corner, and I want it to be isolating and quiet on the highway. And it does all of those things well. It's really a pretty superb overall offering.
It's something that U.S. automakers really know how to get right, is that, CUVs and SUVs are the most popular vehicles in the world now. The body style is very practical, and it's also become a status symbol now to be able to sit up high and feel in control of the environment and what's going on. And Lincoln has just done a tremendous job of then turning the interior into this, really luxurious space. And better when you look at folks that have struggled like Cadillac, who still don't quite understand. This is about really coddling the consumer and then having all this this environment now with voice commands and touch commands and everything that people really find attractive.
It came together across the board, and in some ways it was classic, as Mike mentioned, going back to some of that early the early elements of SUVs, you like that high seating position and all. I was also impressed with the fact that they took a leap forward in an important way with the hybrid engine, plug-in. using that as the highest performance technology. And I think we've all discussed in various events one way or another that if you're going to get electrification to catch on, it really needs to play up more, particularly in the luxury segment, than just getting better mileage. Performance is something that if electrification does well, and they nailed it with the Aviator plug-in hybrid.
Well, too often times, hybrid has come to mean something that's underpowered and no fun.
No
and
joy to
whatnot.
drive. This is exactly the opposite.
Right, exactly. So when you say no, this is a really fast hybrid. You're turning into, I think they're sort of rebranding the whole hybrid issue or label. And it's going to work.
I think you're right. And in fact, at the LA Auto Show, just jump out for a second, the RAV4 plug-in hybrid, the most powerful RAV4 ever introduced and fastest. So Lincoln is actually helping lead the charge, pun intended, with the plug-in hybrid going in the direction that the whole industry is going. And we haven't seen Lincoln really at the cutting edge for ever. For a long time.
What I really like about, the Aviator really shows this on the interior, the attention to detail, and your eye reads it instantly as soon as you get in. There's a lot of bright work. There is a lot of detail just in the speaker grills in the door. Yeah. There's that piano key shifter, where it shifts differently, or you press the button in a very different way, but it's very intuitive and easy to find. And boy, all this works. As soon as you get in the vehicle, you immediately feel like you're in the lap of luxury.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Kia Telluride. Mike, why did this make the finalist list?
This is, again, I think we're speaking of, here's an automaker or a brand that's been doing things well for a while, but this seems to be like a breakthrough. The Telluride is their first real big 3-row offering, and it nailed it in a lot of the ways that the Lincoln did, but at a slightly lower place on the market. But the interior is excellent. It's super clean. It's super easy to use. All of the switchgear feels right. It's got a ton of space. It feels good. It just you get in it and you go, all of a sudden you look at other 3 rows and you think that's pretty much a settled market. With people at the top and you can come in and maybe get in the middle, and Kia comes in and you go, wow, this is really good. I had one for a week, and the whole week it just kept going, I think I really like this. I think this is really good,
Mm-hmm. Drew?
Well, I think the only confusing part is that, Kia is part of the Hyundai Corporation, so they're on the same platform as the Palisade, but they have done really a great job of differentiating the two products. So, I mean, that's why I'm sure they're both on the list, is because they're both really this game-changing vehicle at the price point they are. And you look at you look at what people are paying for 3-row, big 3U SUVs. It's $75, $85, close to $100,000 for things like Suburbans and Tahoes and things like that. The Kia has so much content, so many new features where you can actually have an intercom system where you can talk to people in the back, in the 3rd rows. They have done such a great job of looking at the family buyer that is looking at this.
Yeah.
Great technology, great ergonomics, and all the large display screens. Everything about that vehicle really works, especially at the price point that they're being offered.
Yeah, you've hit a couple of critical points here. One of the things that I like about what they've done with features like the large screens, like that intercom system and all, they have acknowledged in some ways that SUVs are the minivan of this decade by taking the things that people miss about minivans, all those family-friendly features, and recognizing, no, you can't put sliding doors and you need more style to the design. So it is the minivanized SUV, if you will, recognizing the type of buyer it has, bringing all the right things in. And overall, it's just a solid vehicle. We didn't expect. The price is right, the look is right, the performance is right, which, by the way, fits in with everything that Hyundai Kia Motor Company is doing. The only reason I had a surprise, which will lead us into the third vehicle, John,
Yeah, go
is
ahead.
because if we look historically at how NACTOY jurors vote, we have a tendency when we have near identical vehicles from essentially sibling brands, Chevrolet and GMC very often, we often split the vote. You know, a lot of times, well, I'm going to vote for the Chevy, but not for the GM. I'm going to give all my votes to one brand or the other. And I thought that neither one of these would make it, or just one would, because it would be, everybody would pile their votes on one or the other. The fact that the two are there says just how good
And
these
the two, we
vehicles
should say,
are.
Hyundai Palisade,
Exactly.
Kia Telluride, same platform.
But very different looking,
Yes.
very different feel. I think the one's a little more sporty, one's a little more luxurious. It's probably I don't know if you guys agree, I think it's probably the best effort they've made at differentiation between the two brands since they essentially got together and started sharing platforms.
I think that's the best anybody's done in terms of, you go into, that it's the same platform, similar interior, yet they've created, I mean, if you look at the form lines of the instrument panel and everything else, it's very different for both vehicles. Yeah. And, you just don't, it's not like you really see, they just put in some different materials or whatever. Mm-hmm. The whole shape of the instrument panel, everything is different. Yeah. Where various controls and everything are located. The controls are different, the buttons and things like that, but they're both done in a really great attention to detail, really aesthetically pleasing, and both of them have a premium feel. And we had this we've gone through with our 10 best testing for interiors, or for our user experience. We had the same sort of dilemma as how do we pick them both, or do we just pick one? Yeah. Both really good products.
Well, I think that differentiation speaks to, for me, I was a little surprised with the Hyundai. I thought I would get in it and say, well, this is the same as the Telluride. I really like the Telluride. Yeah. They're both, when we had a comparison drive where we have all the cars lined up, I got into them pretty close to each other, and the Hyundai was so different that I kind of, it was a surprise for me to make the finalist list. I like the Telluride better for a lot of tiny reasons, but the fact that what you essentially would assume are the same in some of the voting is probably, for some people, was different, and yet they retained all of the good things that they share, like the camera. If you turn on the blinker, it shows you either side of the blind spot in the instrument cluster. That's shared across it. It's not, they're not keeping anything from one or the other, but they've just made them completely different vehicles. It's really surprising.
Oh, and another thing that I should point out too is it's really important to these family buyers with kids and everything. All the plugs, you can go in the third row, you can plug in your devices and everything. I mean, just all those type of again, features for everything, but always very thoughtful in terms of how the vehicle's going to be used, who's going to be using it. Yeah. Really terrific.
Funny if you're talking about USB ports and all that throughout the car. We used to be talking about cup holders as if it wasn't that swell.
Yeah.
Well, basically these days you better have two USBs and for each cup holder, it seems like. But if I were anybody in the industry right now, probably the only automaker who shouldn't be absolutely scared, fill in the blank, of Hyundai Kia would probably be Toyota, and only because they have suddenly really gotten their game going and have a lot of product. Yeah. The Detroit automakers, it's good to see, for example, Lincoln start to really surprise us, but the other Japanese automakers and even the European luxury makers, you look at the Genesis, which of course we saw, I don't mean to get into another program, but you look at the Genesis G90, which we saw in LA, and the game of those two brands is going up so rapidly that I think they deserve to be rewarded. They are really surprising everyone.
Yeah. As I mentioned at the beginning, there was such a long list of new utility vehicles that came out in 2020. I'm a little bit surprised at some that didn't make the finalist list. Mike, what about the Audi e-tron? First all-electric from Audi, got all kinds of headlines and everything. It looks like the jury kind of shrugged at it.
Yeah, I was into the e-tron myself. I think the thing that I liked about it, I think maybe the reason why it didn't make the finalist list was that it's really normal. Yeah. It doesn't. It's not set up for one pedal driving. You can have some regeneration, but it drives the brake pedal is your main method of slowing down versus some other electric cars. It's quiet, it's composed, it looks fairly normal on the outside. It's essentially an electrified Q5, at a price point that's pretty competitive with other gasoline SUVs,
Which is more or less what?
70,000 and up. And I think maybe that's what it was it didn't feel special to some people, or it flies below the radar.
Well,
sorry, Joe.
okay, well, and the two things that bothered me were, I think our tester model was like 85,000 or something like that. But anyway, it was, but high price, and the range was only about 200 miles, something like that.
Just over.
Which, battery technology is going so fast now, that's not enough.
It's funny. It was only about 2 years ago that we were all saying 200 is going to be the cutoff point.
Yeah.
You have to do it. And now 200 is too low for many people.
Yeah.
Of course, in the Midwest, we know that because that really means about 100, 120 miles in the winter. So, that is a problem. I think that was the single biggest thing that turned off people. I had a long conversation on the drive with a lot of their executives and spoke last week with their head of design, Mark Lichty, exactly about the issue of it not being a distinctive standalone SUV, and
it doesn't look like an electric.
Electric, yeah. Their idea was to make it as normal, quote unquote, as possible, so people would feel comfortable getting it. They were going for the people that were going, I don't know about all these weird looking vehicles and weird things. I have to learn how to one-foot it and all. I think that strategy is a sound argument. I don't think it was the right decision.
I'd agree with you, because sales don't look that great.
No.
So they should have gone some other way. Hey, let's talk about some of the other categories and vehicles, because I'd like to get your guys' impression on that. We did another show a week ago that got into this, but I want to get your look at it too. The trucks that were the three finalists include the Ram Heavy Duty, the Ford Ranger, and the Jeep Gladiator. Why don't we start with the Ram Heavy Duty, Drew? Why did it make the final list?
Well, I mean, Ram is just killing it in pickup trucks. I mean, they are no longer work vehicles. They are, they do work, but with average transaction prices of 45,000 or 50,000, and then when you get into the heavy duties, you're getting close to six figures. Ram really puts the value in great design and also fantastic interiors.
Right.
Just really gorgeous interior, which tell you it really is a luxury vehicle with these incredible, towing capacity. I think the heavy duty is like 20,000 pounds. Enormous towing capacity. But when people are, I think a lot of them are buying, business owners and things like that. But man, you just get into it, and it's a luxury car. With just all this wonderful details. And again, the giant screen is available, the 12-inch screen that gives you all the technology and all the luxury and technology you get in a luxury car. But it's also has these amazing work capabilities.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, and it's interesting that the Ram truck just won not just the finalist position with us, but also was named Green Car of the Year, Green Truck of the Year, for the second year in a row, the first time that's ever happened with them. This vehicle is hitting it out of the park in so many different ways. What's the number? I believe 32 miles a gallon for the 1500 with the Eco Diesel. So this is a very interesting case. Ram is getting all sorts of awards, and it's knocked Chevy off of its perch to become the #2 best-selling truck in the United States.
Well, that's on the light side. We're talking the specific heavy duty. These are truly work trucks.
Yeah.
Right, and it did get, the work truck or the heavy duty just got Motor Trend's Truck of the Year for the 2020. It was announced in November, and I agree with Drew. It's this, you're getting into $70,000, and it's almost like a recognition that these are luxury prices, and with Ram, you're getting this superb interior that's really not just the big screens and the really nice layout, but really nice, thoughtful design too. With things like if you have the bench seat, that center console just holds all kinds of different stuff and has all these cavernous things in it. And the performance with the heavy duties, it's getting into the realm of ridiculous and also the realm of diminishing returns. Like what's another 100 pound-feet? I'm sure there's a commercial hauler out there that's shaking his fist at me right now. But but it is, we're in the realm of pretty crazy numbers now with those, and I think that's I think I thought that would have been a differentiator, but when you drive the heavy duty trucks that were part of the finalists, before we got to these final three, that part is more just, well, they're all kind of amazing. So with the Ram, what sets it apart is that the comfort and the interior and some of that design.
Yeah. Next on the list, Jeep Gladiator. Paul?
No surprise there whatsoever. I think they really surprised some folks. Some folks expected that this was just going to be a Wrangler and bed, and it was a lot more than that. I had the chance to go out on the drive out in California. We drove some insanely tough roads or off-road courses, and it just was virtually unstoppable, and it has a lot of functionality. It's hard to argue against the vehicle. It's a bit goofy looking, and that's why people love it, but it just does what it promised.
Yeah.
Well, and just the again, the usability of it. It has these wholly re-engineered rear seats in the back, and then all these lockable storage compartments all over. Yeah. And again, thought to how these vehicles are going to be used. Why are all these lockable compartments? Well, because it is actually kind of like a convertible, right? You can take the roof out and go, and there's this trend where people really like to do this rugged camping with
It's a
pickup
lifestyle vehicle.
Yes.
It's not a work truck, it's a lifestyle truck.
Yeah. And so, a lot of these folks, apparently they'll go, they'll drive way out someplace, and then they'll go, hiking for, maybe days on end, and leaving the thing open, and, so they want to feel like their valuables or whatever are safe, so you can lock everything up, and just, there's just so many things you can do with that. It's the creativity of the designers at FCA are really having fun.
Mm-hmm. The thing that surprised me about it most was how much better it drives than the Wrangler. The Wrangler, for all of its character and for all of its sales, it really is not that great at just going from point A to point B if you're on pavement. And underneath the Gladiator is completely different than the Wrangler, if that's not common knowledge. And it really shows. It drives a lot better. It's also convertible, which I love. The one knock is it is a little expensive. It starts about 10 grand more than the fanciest trim level base price of the Ford. And you can, so that's like 35 grand, 34 to start, and you can get well above that, which is, I think it's smart if they can pull it, they can sell it for that, but it is expensive.
Well, you mentioned the Ford Ranger. What about it? Why did it make the finalist list?
It's a compact truck. It's a recognition that Toyota's been there a while. Nissan's had the Frontier for sale forever. GM's been there with the Colorado and the Canyon. But it's sort of Ford, who's the half-ton truck king, recognizing, and the argument was with the not having the Ranger was always, well, the lowest price F-150 is as much as a Ranger would cost, and you're going to cannibalize prices or cannibalize sales. The Ranger is sort of saying, Ford coming in and saying, wait a minute, we really think this is a segment, and it's a really good execution. Here's it's the right size. It's probably back when there were compact trucks 20 years ago, you'd consider this a midsize. But it's a little bit of like, if a full-size truck is too big for you, here's boiled down. Still has a ton of capability. You can get all the technology, including the driver aids like adaptive cruise, and you get more fuel economy. It's just everything that when you look at a big truck that says this is too small, the Ranger's not just the newest, but it executes really well.
If anything, I was a little surprised by the Ranger. I think it's a darn good truck. I didn't know if it was going to make the cutoff here. I thought it was a little short in a couple areas. And remember, it's based on a global platform that's been heavily re-engineered, but it's still not a truly all-new truck. Some of the foundations of this model go back, 5-6 years on the road overseas. That said, one of the more interesting things to me of this pick of 3 models for the truck segment is that 2 of them are midsize. And that tells you that this is a segment that is to be taken seriously. It was nearly dead 5 years ago, and now we have a lot of good offerings.
And that is the one knock I'd give to the Ranger, is that it doesn't seem groundbreaking. Like, you get in it and everything's pretty much expected. It does it well, but there's nothing that blows you away
like Gladiator.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, we drive these things a lot in our jobs, and I bring home these pickup trucks. They are so big now. I mean, I think that the growth in the midsize is due to the fact that the full size are getting so big that you need something in the middle.
Hey, we're getting down to the end here. I want you guys to give me who you think is going to win in the different categories. I'm going to throw cars into it. No analysis, no opinion, just who you think is going to win. Doesn't even mean this is how you're going to vote. So Drew, we'll start with you. In the utilities, Lincoln Aviator, Hyundai Palisade, Kia Telluride. What do you think is going to win?
I'll say Palisade.
Okay, Mike?
I'll go with Telluride.
Okay.
I'm tending to say Telluride. That's not necessarily whether I'm voting for it.
Right. You just think that's the way it's going to go?
I think it may.
I think that's the way it's going to go as well. Okay, let's talk about the trucks. Mike, and we're going to start with you. There was the Ram Heavy Duty, the Ford Ranger, or the Jeep Gladiator.
It's another tough one. I don't know where I'm going to vote, but I'll go with the Jeep right now.
You think it'll win, yeah. Paul?
Yeah. Gladiator.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, now we didn't get into the cars because a week ago we did a whole show just on that. The finalists are Corvette C8, Toyota Supra, and Hyundai Sonata. Paul?
Corvette.
Okay.
Corvette.
Sonata.
Somebody had to say Sonata, right, Drew? May as well be you. Well, look, this is really interesting. I can't wait for the announcement, and it's just around the corner of who's going to win this thing. But I want to thank the three of you. Paul Eisenstein with the Detroit Bureau, Mike Austin with Hemmings, Drew Winter with Wards. Thank you guys for all your insight and for going out a little bit on a limb and predicting who's going to win.
Good conversation.
Thanks.
And as I always say, I loved having all of you tuning in.
Underwriting for the production of Autoline This Week has been provided by RSM.
Prepare for challenges specific to your business by working with trusted advisors who help turn obstacles into opportunities. Experience the power of being understood. RSM, Audit, Tax, and Consulting for the Middle Market.